Well, before I get into the substance of today's very relevant program with a well-researched, experienced, and God-fearing frontline independent doctor, my own personal physician, by the way, let me say that no matter your age or your profession, you'll want to listen carefully to today's health-focused program because today's topic has already impacted you to one degree or another. The issue I've chosen for today has already come to you, and it will visit you and me again. And it's going to be accelerated by increasing government mandates. Now, if you're a mom with young children, this issue's not only staring you in the face personally, but the implications are enormous as they relate to your husband, your children, and grandchildren yet unborn. The decisions are extraordinary, and they're life-encompassing. Now, what I've said thus far is not designed to be sensational. To the contrary, what I've said thus far is frankly understated. It will be the focus of what Isaac and I'll address today in Part 1 and next week in Part 2 with frontline Dr. Gordon Donaldson. Now, stay with us as what we share will be straightforward. It will be medically accurate. It'll be truthful. It'll be balanced, and it'll be designed and is designed to help all serious critical thinkers and God-fearing people across our nation today to navigate major health choices coming your way. So what health decision am I talking about? Well, vaccinations. That's right, vaccines and vaccinations. Now, there's likely no one watching me right now who's not received at least one vaccination. Most of us have received more than one. If you've traveled internationally since 2020, you've certainly encountered government vaccine mandates. If you've attended government schools, been employed by the federal government, worked for the airlines or in the armed forces, you know you've been ordered to take the falsely so-called COVID vaccine or lose your employment. But unlike past years when we could generally trust the majority of physicians and hospitals as they were independent and not controlled by government or government-run health plans or big pharma, we now can't blindly just do so. Sadly, we now know that no critically thinking person should unthinkingly trust the words of the researchers or those in government or hospitals and health plans and doctors who owe their livelihood to some politically driven source of funds. Today is different. Going forward no longer is the same as in the past, and we must approach these days with great wisdom and care, and that's the reason for doing this program series and why I encourage you to listen carefully and critically. The title I've chosen to frame today's discussion and that of next week is To Vaccinate or to Not Vaccinate. Vaccine Safety in an Age of Lies. And with that backdrop, I'd like to welcome to the program right now Dr. Gordon Donaldson. And Gordon, thank you so much for being with Isaac and I today here on Stand in the Gap.
It is truly a pleasure to be with you today.
Gordon, just to get us going right now, I've already kind of intimated it, but I think all of us watching know that these last few years have really changed. The whole idea of truth and justice and what's reliable and not reliable has changed, even to the point of advice given to us by doctors and hospitals and all of that. So let me go to this question here. As a Christian physician, what are the foundational principles which guide you or should guide the professional relationship between physician and patient? Just establish that overall relationship. Could you do that?
Well, number one, it is a personal relationship. It is a very personal, intimate relationship. If that is not part of the underlying principle, then we really can't treat patients if they're not open to disclosing information. That becomes very critical. The other principle from a standpoint of a physician is when I am dealing with a patient, number one, they're coming through my doors as an individual who is made in the image of God. And because of that, I must treat them as such. So there is no difference. everyone is on equal grounds. They may come from different backgrounds and everything, but everyone is on equal grounds from that standpoint. Also, we need to take the principle as a physician, as a Christian physician, that of utmost is first, do no harm. The Hippocratic Oath was very clear on that. So I do not want to do any harm to any patients coming through my door. The other thing that we have to consider with anything is, especially as we're dealing with this topic, is the whole safe and effective narrative. That has been thrown at us, and that goes back years to all of the vaccines. Oh, they're safe and effective. And that is not necessarily to be understood and taken at face value. We cannot take that at face value. So we always have to look at the benefits and the risks. So no matter what treatment I propose, it has to be a risk-benefit analysis.
And Dr. Donaldson, I'm just going to interrupt you on you right now, because what you just said sets us up perfectly for the balance of the program today. We're going to get into more of that risk-benefit, ladies and gentlemen, the health aspects of it, good health, bad health, all of those kind of things. We'll get into more of that with our special guest, Dr. Gordon Donaldson. We'll be back in just a moment.
Truth. Flexible or permanent? The Bible, ancient history, or powerfully relevant? Culture, a reflection of enlightenment or warning signs? The pastor, commentator, or frontline combatant? Every day, American Pastors Network speaks to these questions where and when they matter. With hundreds of affiliate radio stations nationwide, a website and mobile app screening today's headlines through the twin lenses of the Bible and the Constitution, educating, informing, equipping. This is the American Pastors Network. The time is now to stand in the gap for truth.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and today we're talking with Dr. Gordon Donaldson from the Morgantown Family Practice about vaccine safety. And before we go any further, I think it's important, Doctor, that we talk about the definitions. And this has been, I think something that has been discussed even in pastoral and church circles all the way back to the Great Awakening, Jonathan Edwards, with the smallpox and things like that. But for our day and age, I think it'd be helpful to know the definition of a vaccine, and even within the last few years, maybe the changing definitions of it. So what can we go by for defining it?
Well, as Sam has mentioned many times on the program, going back to Webster's and what a vaccine is, and I'm going to read it. I think it's important that people hear it verbatim as to what a vaccine by definition is, and then what it has been changed to. So by definition, a vaccine is a preparation or a suspension that is a weakened, killed, or fragmented microorganism which is administered to produce artificially and increase immunity to a particular disease with antibodies that are manufactured by your own body. So the problem is that in order to accommodate everything else that has come down the line, and specifically with the mRNA vaccines, the definition has been expanded to include gene therapy RNA and infusions of lymphocytes or antibodies to primarily, quote unquote, prevent disease. Now, I would contend that common sense clearly tells us that these are actually treatments, and they are not a vaccine by definition at all. So,
they say follow the science, but it sounds like maybe they're changing some of the, and I think this is why it's so important that we define the terms. Here's what we've always talked about historically. This is what a vaccine is. Here's what they're now including in their government definitions of it. But let's get to the heart of the issue, and you already brought this up, the risk-benefit. So the point of vaccines, what I've, my understanding of it, which is from, as just a layman, so to speak, is that it's to save lives, in particular to avoid certain diseases and things. So it's, children are usually the ones that the focus is on them getting vaccinations. When I've worked at schools, especially in the public school, there was, a list of things they want you to get vaccinated against if you're going to be around children. So in your practice, and you've practiced for many years, as you've observed, as you've watched this, can you say that scientifically they're able to prove that this has actually helped and that this is saving lives and preventing diseases?
Looking back at the vaccines, no, you really can't. And there's two very important aspects to that. Number one is how the vaccines got approved and against what illness they got approved. And then the second is the long-term studies are not out there. A very big part of vaccines are what we call the adjuvant, or the carriers that are taking the fragments or whatever it is and being the way of getting it into the body. So it's important for us to understand that sometimes those adjuvants are really the problem with the vaccine, and that the aspect of the vaccine that's the fragment or whatever really is not consequential at all. So in the prevention of the illness, whatever it is that we're looking at to vaccinate against, you have to go back and look at what was happening with the illness to begin with. One of the things that is clearly been shown, and this goes back to Dr. Semmelweis in the 1800s, and that is the number one discovery in medicine, was that germs are spread by either bad sanitation or by not hand washing. And so with that, that's really where the benefit has come with mitigating illness. And in almost all the cases when the vaccine came along, the illness was already on the decline, but it was the vaccine that got credit for the benefit.
You raise a question of saying that when we look back over history, vaccines have been around for a long time. You are not saying that the original concept of a vaccine to try and introduce a dead virus or something of that type to help the body's immune system, is that by itself, that concept, that by itself is not a wrong concept, is it?
No, it is not a wrong concept, but again, we go back and we have to look at what it is that we're trying to vaccinate against. If it's something that getting the illness is not going to be death producing, then it actually is a bad concept, because natural immunity is far better immunity. Natural immunity is almost always a permanent immunity, whereas a vaccine is only a temporary immunity. It does not cause long-term, which is why you have to keep getting your tetanus shot every 10 years, why you have to go and get a follow-up for your flu shot. So the concept there is it's a situation that's very temporary, whereas the other can be a long-term approach if the illness has gotten and natural immunity is produced, because our cells remember. Our cells have great memory, and that's the important thing in fighting illness.
And Gordon, I think as we've talked about on our radio program, Stand in the Gap Today and all that, on this issue and others, at contrast, there is the human immune system, the natural immune system created by God, which you just said has a way of responding to disease and remembering for a lifetime, permanent immunity. Whereas the vaccines you're calling about, we know now are not permanent, have to be re-administered, and if I'm not, I don't want to put these words in your mouth, but actually become more of a treatment. Certainly the new gene therapies we're talking about with the COVID becomes a treatment, not a vaccine. Therefore, again, the importance of defining the terms properly, perhaps. I want you to comment on that if you need to, but come back on this and follow up. If the historic treatment of vaccines in the form that they have been, with the carriers that you talked about oftentimes, which you said, all right, the carriers actually can be a problem creator, and the effect of it is not permanent, but you got to come back and revisit it, then one would have to say that the approach inherently is inferior to just a person getting disease, treating it with the best known treatment, and ending up with a lifetime of immunity. Now, again, comment, but here's the question to you right now. For those watching who've had vaccines in the past, me included, I am now thinking about what I should do going forward. But I may not be sick right now, but maybe others who have problems. So can you identify from some research now relative to health impacts of vaccines on both childhood and adult health? Is there, give me the benefits that we can now know, research-wise, and any risks that we now know to vaccines generally. What do we know? What can you share?
Well, certainly the benefits are so minuscule that the risks far outweigh that. Dr. Paul Thomas did an excellent study in his own practice as a pediatrician, where he followed the children in his practice for 10 years. And what he found that for the entire 10 years, the children in his practice who were getting the regular vaccinations were sicker on multiple levels than those who did not. And those who were only partially vaccinated, they did fare better in between. But those fully vaccinated were sicker children for the entire 10 years, and it continued to go up, even after the study ended at 10 years. Interestingly, that study was retracted because of what he was sharing with that. And it was then followed up with another study that corroborated what he was saying. So the risks with these are huge. We know that the incidence of autism, allergies, autoimmune disorders, weakened immune system, inflammation, early death, cancers, SIDS in children, cardiovascular events with myocarditis, and vaccines can actually predispose someone to get the illness, which is what we're experiencing right now, especially with the mRNA vaccines, that it actually sets up for problems in huge ways that we do not know where this is going to end, and that's really the problem. So when we look at the risks far outweigh the benefits. And again, going back, how these vaccines in many cases are approved is simply based on an ear infection, or on a pneumonia, or on a cold, or on a simple virus that has no implications. Most of us have had them at some point in time in our life. And ear infections don't kill anybody. Pneumonias can, but again, you have to understand that the vaccine is only partially against some of the pneumonias. So a lot of the pneumonias, and those studies have not been done, which ones were the ones that caused death, and if they were immunized, were they immunized against the right strain of the pneumonia. So you have to look at the illness, you have to look at what the potential outcome is, and really the bottom line is we want to prevent death. That's the most important thing when it comes to any illness that we want to mitigate.
All right, and Gordon, I think I'm just going to leave it right there with you right now in that regard, and ask you to give some further overall views when we come back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us perhaps right now, we're in the middle of a two-part series. This is part one on the issue of to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. And we're talking about this because we are now, as a nation, in an age where truth has been completely set aside. And over the last few years in particular, we have seen it. Truth has been set aside in areas of law, judicial rulings, research, certainly medicine and health. And all of that brings it down to this issue of what we're talking about now, vaccinations, because the government is increasing its pressure and its recommendations that more and more and more vaccinations be taken and more frequently. We're asking the question, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That is the subject of this program. We'll be back for the conclusion of today's program in just a moment.
Stand in the Gap is produced and recorded in the studios of Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Watch Lighthouse TV wherever you go. Available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can view our in-house studio productions on demand, or watch what's on the station right now with our 24/7 live stream. Search Lighthouse TV online on your streaming device, or go to our website lighthousetv.org for more information. Lighthouse TV, positively different.
Welcome back to Stand in the Gap, and we've been talking about vaccine safety. So, Dr. Gordon, I'd just like to go to you in this day and age, and I often find people that say, I used to get the flu shot or this vaccine or that vaccine, but ever since the COVID and the mRNA shot, I don't know, I'm kind of questioning it. What would you say to a God-fearing person in regards to just the entire issue of vaccine safety? Why should I consider it? So many people have just rolled up their sleeves every year and gotten a flu shot or different, had their children vaccinated. What are some reasons why we might want to consider it and look into the vaccine safety?
The first thing is what we have to understand is, again, going back to the risk benefit. And what are the benefits? The benefits have to be far outweighing the risk. In no vaccine study has it ever gone beyond 5 years. And we know that the implications to the vaccines that children get in the childhood extend well into adulthood. Like I said, some of the things with cancers and with autoimmune disorders, those things extend into adulthood. And so it is very important that we look at that long term, which is not there. So that's the first thing. But the problem is because the pharmacology or the pharmacological companies have no liability, these will never be done. And so what we have to do is we have to understand that what we are guarding, as a Christian, we're guarding a temple that God has given to us. And so we really have to consider what it is that we're putting into that. And we have to do our research and look at the potential long-term issues compared to the benefits that we're going to get from it. So again, that's really the key, is that over the long haul, we have no clue. And for our children, we have to protect our children. That is key.
And Gordon, that was a great summary. And we look forward to next week, you being back with us, where we're going to talk a little bit more about risk-benefit, a little bit of how we got to this point where we could actually be moving excuse me, so far along without the research being done, and then a list of protocol, which you'll give next week on this program, of things that people can do in a practical sense. I think that'll be great. So thanks for being with us today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today on this program. I know that this issue is one that maybe you've thought a lot about it, maybe you've thought little about it, but we're doing this because, as a believer, we ought to know and be very careful about what we put into our bodies. Vaccines are one of those things that we do. It changes us. That's why we're talking about it today. Not telling you what to do, but raising questions so that you can know the best decision to make for you and your family. Well, we certainly thank all of you for watching. If you've written to us, I thank you. And if you've never contacted us, please consider doing that today. It's always a pleasure for Isaac and I to hear from you and to know that you are praying and that you are partnering with us, both in prayer and in finances. And if you're not, we pray that you would consider doing just that so that we continue putting out truth here on Stand in the Gap.